Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. Today's episode, we're working on the Mellow Yellow 65 behind me. We're going to install a whole bunch of fiberglass panels on it. Last week we did all the fiberglass prep. This week we're going to start skinning it with the firewall floor, rockers, and the custom rear floor from Dynamic Corvettes. So be sure to stick around. So in the last week's video, I created a little bit of chaos because we had to splice together some fiberglass panels, the floor, firewall, the rockers. We had to do some repair work on the rear deck of the 65 Corvette, which was a wreck. We're turning it into a Restomod on a Roadster shop Spec 7 chassis. So I need to start off the video by flipping all these panels over and scuffing all the glue, all the repaired fiberglass, and getting rid of any extra lumps and chunks so we can start gluing this car together. The foundation of the car is the firewall, the rockers, and the floor. Everything else builds off of those. So first we need to get the bonding strips, which go on the cowl that are on that tire. Need to scuff those, scuff the firewall, they go on first, then the floor butts up to that, and then the rockers go on. So that's what we're going to start off with. We have some firewall plenums to put on, and then I need to start integrating this rear floor to the car, but that'll be on a separate day. I'll just focus on all this stuff. Hopefully in about 2 hours we can get all these pieces installed. So I prepped all the mating surfaces. You can tell where stuff mates based on the glue, the pattern of the paint, and you can just mock it up by setting the panel in place. So I have all that stuff scuffed with 36 grit or 24 grit, and you don't have to get every single little bit off. You can see here I have a little bit of glue, but it's a smooth transition. Sometimes if there's a really thick glob of glue there, it's probably there for a reason. Like these corners sometimes have a lot of glue. So some areas I left it, which is fine. You don't have to get rid of every single ounce. I also cleaned this flange up because that's where the dynamic rear floor will lap and it'll come off the back there, the firewall, and these bonding strips. Now it's a little more obvious after I sanded it. You can see all these dimples that are shiny. Those are recessed areas for where the rivets go that pop rivet this onto the birdcage. So what I'm gonna do, wipe this off and shoot a little bit of adhesive in here, and we're going to drill holes, and hopefully we hit the original hole underneath, and we'll put a pop rivet in each one of those the whole way around. And that glue is just to keep some water in case it gets into the windshield channel, that it won't seep through here and start to penetrate into here and start to rust our windshield frame out. We do not want that, so we'll try our best to seal all that up. So we glued the rockers, the floor pan, the firewall, and the firewall bonding strips in place. All that cured up. Now it's time to focus on the back side of the car. Because this is going on a Roadster shop chassis, we have to replace basically the whole rear floor with the center section, 2 wheel tubs, and this little piece for the transmission tunnel. This piece is important because to get the stance of the car, the Roadster shop essentially raised the suspension points in the car, which effectively lowers the rest of the car. A consequence of that, as you can see, the center of the rear end is almost at the height of the original tunnel. So they sent me this piece. We'll see if we can make it work. it was for their Art Morrison chassis kit that they just came out with. I think we can make it work, because on that split window, I had to kind of do a lot of cutting and manipulating and handling of fiberglass. It'd be a lot easier if we could just cut that piece out and glue this one in place. So we have to do a lot of prep. We have to cut out the old wheelhouses. We also have to make sure, since this is super flimsy, that everything's in the right position. We need to bolt the body down. We need to get this shimmed up. We need to mock up the rear deck to make sure the width is correct. We need to do some trimming with the wheelhouses and across the back wall, do a lot of scuffing, and then we should be able to get this all glued together. And I need to take my clamping fixtures off. I just use these deep jaw clamps that ride on the bottom of the chassis. They touch the bottom of the floor, and with some big blocks of wood, you can effectively clamp the rockers in place without having to use any screws. And in the front, you see we have a whole bunch of clamps going around the car, because we need to make sure that this firewall was pressed up against the floor, and I was able to use the chassis as a pushing point just to make sure everything was held nice and tight. So we can take all this stuff apart, everything's glued nice and tight. I need to go back through eventually and put rivets through all these holes to rivet the firewall to the body, but we'll do that in a separate video at a separate time. So I bolted the body down, and I just threw some bushings and bolts in the back. The tub is just loosely sitting here. The deck cross member that goes right under here is just temporarily clamped in place. That helps locate the deck. The deck helps locate where the floor tub needs to sit, and so does the splash shield. That's butted up nice and tight. I took some measurements across the deck and compared it to the deck lid, and we have about an 1/8 inch gap. So I could actually open this up a little bit and make this a little bit wider, but this is pretty well close to on the money of where it needs to sit. Now, in terms of the floor sitting in here, these wheel tubs aren't even close to fitting because the old ones are in the way. And I have this piece to cut down here, and that's not letting the bottom piece sit flat. So you can see we've got a bit of work to do to get all this stuff to line up. So I'm gonna do some trimming to get it to roughly fit. So I cut the wheelhouses out, and I have the floor fit up in here, and it's fitting really nice. This transforms the back of the car and makes this look like a lot nicer of a project, where it had the crack and the little splint over there holding that wheel tub on with, I thought this was just a junk piece of angle iron, but this is actually a core support bracket for a C2. So I've got a little score there. That's nice. So it fits pretty good. I still need to do some tweaks. And there's a couple little holes. That's just the way it was already cut before I got to it. So we'll fill that in once these are glued in. Any little holes or anything, we'll fiberglass those along with any little holes up here. That'll just be a day of glassing. But now I need to come across from the top of this lip here to the other side, draw a straight line, and we'll cut this flange off because the floor sits on that. That's the last big area I need to trim. And I'll really look to make sure that we're contacting everywhere, because like here, you can see we're kind of interfering with this web a little bit. So I need to make this radius a little sharper. So I'll come in here with the carbide and we'll trim and we'll make everything fit as close as we can. But we can also come through with our Sharpie at this point, and we can trace out where we need to grind on each panel to prep them, because we're getting to that point. So I think we're gonna blow it all apart, grind all that stuff, do our final trims. Let's get it to fit really well, and then we will start gluing it. The center part of the floor glues in, and then the wheelhouses. I like to do all 3 of them at once. That'll make sure we're in the right spot. I had to cut the floor a little bit to shift it this way, because the Roadster shop centers the engine and transmission in the chassis, where originally it was biased to the passenger side just a little bit. So that's part of the reason why this tunnel has to get bigger. That's why we have to do tunnel mods up there. So I basically just tried to center this pin on the center of that floor to start. And that's looking pretty good. Also, Dynamic makes a really nice floor. So I know this part is square, and that helps me square up this floor pan to the car. This back flange and this front flange helps to straighten this out to make sure this car goes together really nice. So this is a really important part of getting this car to fit right, look right, and just to be the best it can be. So now let's take all this apart and start doing some trimming and sanding. So I took the floor out, cut the back wall, prepped everything, and I just threw it in place just to see how it looks and to just test fit the tunnel. This is what it'll look like when it's done. I'm not going to install these pieces of the tunnel because that covers up my clamping area. So we'll put those in later, but they have these little flanges on it. This flange needs to be cut down in my opinion, just so like your carpeting or your center console won't interfere with that. So I'll tweak that down the road, but this all looks good. Whenever you're fitting up these panels, you want to make sure there's no radius on here. When I cut the wheel well, I cut it right at that curve where it turns, and you want to make sure that this piece is perfectly flat, because if it starts to tip down, it'll push your wheel tub out. And I put a Sharpie mark on the outside here because the wheel tub does not get covered by the body completely, so a little bit of this will be exposed. So we know where to put the glue and everything. So I'm happy with the way this looks. Let's take it all apart, wipe it down, glue the center in, and we'll do each side. And then we'll have to get a little creative with holding the center. I think I'll put some wood in the middle to help space it out, and maybe some body bushings for this body mount here. And then that way we can put a little bit of weight on here, and that'll help clamp all that together. So we'll just make sure it's nice and strong, but this all looks good to me. So I have the center part of the floor and the two wheel tubs glued in. I did my best to avoid using screws, but I had to, just with all these contours. It's kind of hard to get everything clamped and get it looking right. You could try to make a clamping fixture from the bird cage over, but sometimes it helps to have something to squeeze both sides. So I just had to use a few screws in the middle. No one will ever see it. The frame rails are there, and that can be smoothed out. I don't like using screws on the outside. They can come back, and you can see little round like divots in the car later on, but you're not going to see that in the floor. And even if you crawl underneath it, you're not going to really notice that ever. So I'm going to let all this cure up. I have some heavy things on the back. I put some wood blocks underneath this body mount to help suck everything together, and it all looks good. Now, in the next time we work on this car, we'll have to work on the center part of the floor. So we'll have to cut the tunnel and get all that stuff fit up. I think this piece is going to work really well. Melanie asked me to check the fit and see if I like it and see if she should market it for this, and I believe she should, because right now this piece is obviously very handy, but you still need to do the work on the tunnel up there. And if you've done all this work and you bought all the nice stuff from Dynamic, why not just have a little piece of a tunnel? So if you're running a Tremec 5-speed, you don't need to have a much bigger tunnel. You can kind of rework your tunnel a little bit, but the back half, you can order that piece. So all that looks really nice. So we're gonna let this cure up, but that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Next week, we're changing it up. We're moving this car out so we can get that 63 split window in here, get the front end put on it from Dynamic, and get that and the 58 Corvette out of the way. So the very next video you'll see will be me shuffling all these projects around, cleaning the garage and making room, showing you how many trips we have to make to get everything worked out here. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort, but the juggling needs to happen to keep projects moving and just to keep the flow going in the shop. So I got a lot of work to do, and I'll catch you guys later.